Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your man Bentley Kyle Evans, and we are back with another episode of the Hollywood Blueprint. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the finding your why in Hollywood subject matter. So sit back and enjoy. We're going to break into this in just a few seconds. So I hope you guys really take something great from this. Here's a question that I asked my dad one day. I asked him about something in particular, and he wanted to know why I wanted to know it. And I told him that I just wanted to know because I wanted to know. And he says, "Well, son, one thing about the question why is you can never really answer that question about why something is or why something isn't." But I had to retort and say, "Dad, there always has to be a reason why you do anything in your life, any experience." And so we agreed to disagree, but I will say this. In getting into show business, I think it's very important to identify your why. Why do you want to be in this business in the first place? A lot of people just want to be in it because, let's face it, the Hollywood industry does garner a great deal of money if you do it right. It's a business that can create wealth beyond your imagine. So I think a lot of people get into it for that very reason, but I think that that's the wrong reason to be in show business. But you have to figure out what's your why. Why do you want to get into the Hollywood industry? What's your reason behind it? Because I think that will define what you do in the industry, how far you will go, and what your accomplishments or your failures will be. So, in my why, and finding my why did I want to be in this industry? Well, first and foremost, I always felt like as a child I was somewhat awkward and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life because let's just be honest here. I didn't think that I was good at anything. I didn't think that I was a great athlete. I wasn't a great student. Only thing I felt like I was great at being was a great son. I wanted to be a great son because I wanted to impress my parents. And I think that was part of my why I wanted to get into show business because I felt like it was something different. It was something creative. And I had a name that was different, Bentley. I never met another Bentley in my life growing up. So I knew whatever it was that I had to do in my life, it had to be unique and different from the crowd. So that was part of my why. Now, another part of my why, of why I wanted to be in the Hollywood industry and show business, was because I grew up as a television savant. I was a television kid. I would wake up in the morning and get to that TV at 6 a.m. to watch the cartoons while other kids were trying to get outside on the block to play football and baseball and whatever sport was happening. I had no interest in any of that. I just wanted to be in front of the television and I loved the entertainment industry. Now, at the time, I didn't even know what the industry was. I didn't even know that the actors on television were real people. I thought that this was just an entertainment vehicle. It was just a box and it had shows on it. And whether they were cartoons or whether they were dramas or comedies or whatever it was, I didn't really realize that there was a real industry behind it. And then as you grow older, you start to realize that movie stars are real people. And so I knew that I wanted to be a part of that once the reality set in that this is a living, real thing. And I knew I have to become a part of that somehow. I did not know how I would become a part of it, but I knew why I wanted to do it because I was enamored by the entire Hollywood industry. And one of the early films that I remember seeing in my childhood was a film called Cooley High. Cooley High is a classic. If you haven't seen it, you should watch that. That's a great film. Cooley High highlighted a basketball player and his best friend, and on the south side of Chicago. And these individuals were really polarizing characters that stood out in my life. And I remember watching that film very, very, very closely and falling in love with the subject matter. One of the characters that stood out to me in the film Cooley High was a character that was played by the actor Glenn Turman. And that's the first time I had actually seen Glenn Turman. And the character that he played was a character by the name of Preach. And it was a real, I don't want to spoil it, although it's 50 years later. I don't want to spoil what happens in the movie in case you decide to see it and you haven't. But in the end of the movie, Glenn Turman's character, the Preach character, leaves Chicago and heads to Hollywood to become a Hollywood writer. And I remember saying to myself, what is that? A writer? That sounds really, really cool. And it just seemed like a cool occupation that didn't require a suit and tie. It didn't require being in an office job or, working in a plant or at the Ford Motor Company or anything like that. It was just a cool, artsy occupation. And I remember resonating with that character early on in my life. So flip to some years later, I'm in the industry. I found my way into the industry, but I found my way into the industry as an actor. And during that process, I happened to be hanging out in the green room at In Living Color. I found myself in their green room while they were taping the show. And there was this young, attractive lady that was in the green room, and I approached her and we sparked a conversation, and I asked her what she did for a living, and she says, I'm a writer. I'm a television writer. There was that word again. I was like, ooh, that's sexy right there. In my mind, I was like, I love the way that sounds because I had never met a writer before, or at least I didn't realize that I had. I loved that ideology of being a writer. And so when Yvette said that she wanted to be a writer, and it was Yvette Lee Bowser that, of course, went on to create Living Single and a whole bunch of other shows. She's a very accomplished, very successful woman, and we have become friends over the years. Our kids went to school together, but it started out with that conversation, and I knew right there in that moment I wanted to be a writer, not just an actor. I knew that I wanted to be a writer. So that was my reasoning why I wanted to be a writer, because it sounded good. And then I understood what a writer actually does. They're the ones that create the worlds. They're the ones that give the narrative. They're the ones that keep the story going. And I felt like I had to be a part of that community. And that was part of my reason why. I wanted to find something that I was good at. And one thing that I realized early on was that I was a really good storyteller, just standing on the street corners, telling jokes and with different friends. And I knew that I could embellish and I could tell funny jokes. So I knew that that was my reason why, and everybody else should find what their reason why is, because it's very important that you really, really determine what it is that you're trying to do before you get into this business. In the Hollywood industry, there are so many different occupations within the industry. Like there are soundmen, there are cameramen, there are directors, producers, writers, wardrobe, hair, makeup, so many that I can't even name them all. But they're all a part of one community, and that is the entertainment industry. And I think that it's very important for you to identify what it is that you want to do, but more importantly, not just why you want to do it. And that's what sustainability is all about. When you know why you're doing something, that something that you're doing just comes a little bit easier and it makes a lot more sense. So when you're thinking about what you want to do in this industry, really research in your mind. It's not a lot of research you have to do outside, but you have to do a lot of soul searching and really come to a conclusion as to why you want to do something. So find your why, because it's very, very important. And I want to know what your why is. So maybe you can leave it in the comments down below. and we'll talk about it someday. But in the meantime, you guys take care, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Hollywood Blueprint.